What's up, guys, and welcome to the Rebalance podcast, where we dive into topics that matter most when it comes to overcoming struggles, injuries, and finding balance in your life. Everybody's idea of balance is that bit different, so my goal is to give you different perspectives, practical tips, as well as expert insights into what it means to live a balanced life. My name is Robbie Cassidy. I'm a physiotherapist and a health coach, and I've been helping people reignite their love for challenge, overcome their fear, and find more balance in their life through the process of self-development. So, let's get into it. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. This episode of the podcast, we are going to look at using competencies in rehab. And the reason being is I was on a consultation recently with a guy who has been struggling with recurring hamstring injuries whenever he gets back to play. And what we were looking at is we got it to a point that he was able to tolerate. And he was like, perfect, I'm happy now. But I was like, no, we need to make sure that we focus on the competencies and getting to certain levels before we let you go. And the reason I was saying that is because too often people focus on getting pain-free, but that doesn't exactly mean that you can tolerate the demands of the sport afterwards. So being pain-free, sometimes, because as we know about the pain system, how complex it is and how many factors contribute to it, if you just go to that point, once you get back and you start getting back into play, even though pain can be a great dictator, it'll help you know what you can do, where your limits are, and that if you're not able to tolerate the demands of the sport and you're jumping back into a sport with people who have been training for the last 6 months or whatever, 3 months since you've been gone, you're trying to get up to their level with a injury, or carrying an injury, or carrying while rehabbing an injury, and there's such a gap that needs to be bridged. So we were basically talking about competencies and how we can focus on, right, let's take this off and then take this off and then see how you get on, come back and then continue to build it up to a certain level so that once you get back, there's not that much of a gap. Now, it's going to be very difficult to bridge the gap completely because obviously they're going to be at a certain level and there's certain skills required and coordination required with playing at a high level. But you can do what you can outside of there, so when you get in there, it's not as much of a problem. Now, to jump in, I guess the main problems I see with this is people don't set objectives in rehab. They just focus on, let's get it pain-free and let's get back to play. And I think that's a huge one, is that if you focus on just getting pain-free and then you stop, as I said, you don't bridge that gap. So function is arguably more important than getting pain-free, because you can actually be able to tolerate things with a certain function and have a small bit of pain, but you're still able to tolerate. You still have the function there, so you can run a 5K. So that often is a better predictor in a lot of cases. And especially when you're looking at injury prevention and you don't want that injury reoccurring. So it's easier to use this idea of having competencies and different things that you're able to tick off before you get back into the play. I will talk about different injuries and I'll talk about a couple of case studies of people that I worked with just to give you ideas of how you would work on it in different situations. And I think probably the first one and the most common one is the hamstring injury. And hamstring injury in field sports, where it's either GAA, soccer, rugby, or any field sport. GAA is obviously hurling and football. So any type of field sport that you're playing that you're likely to get a hamstring injury because of the high impact or high velocity movements, a lot of acceleration, deceleration, where you have to cover a lot of distance, but you also have to cover shorter distance in higher bursts. You have to take tackles. You have to be able to go backwards and forwards, and change of direction obviously has to be good as well. So having those in mind and understanding the demands of your sport first is primary in rehab. If you understand the demands of your sport, it makes it a lot easier to plan. It makes it a lot easier to lay out your competencies as well. In GAA, let's say, oftentimes you need to be able to cover 1,500 meters of high-speed running. Now that's at the upper levels, 1,500 to even up to 3,000. And I think that aiming for that is good. A lot of club games might not get above that. A lot of club games maybe get 800 to 900. But when you're looking at reducing the recurrence of an injury, it's important to aim above that point. So I would say straight away, okay, when you're looking at coming back from a hamstring injury, you understand that there's going to be a lot of high-speed running. You understand there's going to be accelerations and decelerations. And really important one here, most hamstring injuries occur when you're decelerating and not accelerating. So when you're going up to something and then you have to try to slow yourself down really fast, that's when the majority of hamstring injuries happen, which people don't usually understand as much. People often think that it's more the acceleration part of it. Obviously, you can tear it on a push-off, but when we look at the stats and we look at the numbers, and the research behind it, it's often on the deceleration portion of it, where you're trying to slow down and somebody maybe goes for a change of direction and you're looking to kind of stop yourself so you can move, and then it goes. So we need to include that somewhere in the rehab, because acceleration, deceleration is often missed. Now, how would we look at it? Well, with this guy specifically, we wanted to first off build up a good bit of strength in the gym. And what reason being is I wanted to make sure that if we could aggravate it in the gym, that's a great sign that when he gets back on the pitch, it's probably still going to be, there's still going to be a problem there. So if we skip the gym altogether, we're going to miss out on a lot of, let's say, weaker points. So I often look to, and I tell people, we're going to try find the limit here in the gym in a lot of cases. And then when we can't find the limit anymore, that you're able to feel that point, then we know that, okay, right, we've hit a good point here, we can maintain this, and we'll look to really increase everything else and maybe prioritize other things a small bit more. And simple things that you can use in the gym with a hamstring might be that you use your you use your Nordic curls, assisted ones, where you have something you're holding a resistance band and you're able to let yourself down, obviously building up to the point that you're letting yourself down completely and just dropping off, and single leg RDLs. When I was in the States, I was working with a basketball team, and the guy that was over the university, the head therapist, let's say, he had this point that really stuck with me, but I haven't been able to find the research on it, what he was talking about since. But what he was basically saying was that if you can hold 20% of your body weight in each hand, in dumbbell, like in dumbbell form, obviously, or kettlebell, whichever one you want, and you do single leg RDLs for 3 sets of 5, you have a 90% less you're 90% less likely to tear a hamstring in the following season. That was something that he had, and he was very specific about that. But as I said, I never really found the research to back that up. So, but I think it's a very good point, because 20% of your body weight in each hand and doing a single leg RDL is a lot of weight, and it's something that has worked for him. So it's something that if you are looking to get back, it's a nice marker to say, okay, if I can get this, it's a good one to get back to. Obviously, we know that Nordic curls are good at preventing hamstring injuries, but this is a good one in the rehab phase as well. 20% of your body weight in each hand, and look to get 3 by 5 on each leg. Obviously, you have to go each leg. Single leg RDL, slight bend in the knee, and making sure that you're finding the weak points when you're doing that. That's another one as a side section. If you are rehabbing an injury, you need to look for the weak points. Just going through the motion and having perfect form, which is I have an issue with in rehab, is you can't always have perfect form, because rarely in sport, in any case, do you ever have perfect form in anything that you do. So it's important to train outside of that form as well, and make sure you can build strength in and out of form, in my opinion. I think it's really, really important. But once you have that gym work done and you've built up the competencies in the gym, that you're not getting anything too severe from your gym sessions, and that you don't feel the area anymore, and you're obviously doing a small bit of running in the background, because when you're looking at hamstring injuries, you need to be doing gym and running at the same time. But I would start to prioritize your sprinting or your running a small bit more. And how you would do this is you would look at distance and you look at speed first. So sprinting at 75% of your speed is the first goal that you need to get to, and building up to that. And then being able to maintain that for 40 meters is a nice marker for GAA, where you can run at 75% for 40 meters. And what you do then is you shorten the acceleration period at the start, and you shorten the deceleration period at the end. So it could be like, let's say you start off with 30 meters of acceleration, where you have a good bit of space to build up your speed. You hold that speed for 40 meters, you decelerate for 20 meters, 30 meters. Then that goes down to 15, and then that goes down to 10, and you're dropping it off. So now at the end, you have 10 meters to accelerate up to 75%, hold it for 40, and then you have 10 meters to decelerate. I have a full, if anyone wants to see this, go to the bottom of this podcast description, and I have a return to running rehab protocol that you can just click in there and get, and it basically breaks these down individually. 75% is the first one, and then after that you're looking at building it up to 90%, and you're making sure that they can cover distance. The other thing is, as you're looking at your week in, week out, what I often say is like a nice 10% increase per week on the amount that you're sprinting is a good measure, where you're not upping it too fast. So one week you might run 800, the next week you run 880, and you build it up like that. That's a nice way of building it up. It's not going to work for everybody, but that's more of at the end stage when you're looking to, okay, I need to still get up to that, as I said, 1,500 meters of high speed running. This is how an easy way to do it. And then you can break it down. So you're running at 90%, then you're running longer distances at 75 and 80%, and then you're working at like really short explosive acceleration and deceleration. And once you start to build that up, you understand then, okay, I'm able to tolerate this. I can tolerate acceleration, deceleration. I can tolerate change of direction, because obviously you're going to bring that in as well, where you run up to the cone and turn out to the side. I can tolerate the gym exercises. Now I'm going to come back into, and I'm going to jump into training for 15 to 20 minutes and see how I get on, pull back. Now I might jump into the more controlled exercises where we're doing longer kicks and runs. Perfect, pull back, and then you start jumping into the more chaotic backs and forwards and attack and defending style training. That's how you build up your competencies in each of those levels when you're looking at like a hamstring injury. Simple one. What's up, guys? Robbie here. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I just wanted to take a quick moment to ask for your help. Could you please take a minute to leave us a rating on whatever you're listening to this right now? The ratings and reviews mean the world to us, and they help us to understand what you love about the show as well as what we can improve on. Plus, it does actually help us reach even more listeners again. Thank you so much for your support so far, and we are getting straight back into it right now. Now let's look at something different, like a knee injury with running. Okay, and it's a chronic knee injury where someone told you had osteoarthritis in your knee or a meniscal injury, and now every time you run, you can only get to 5 kilometers and then it flares up, and it's because of this knee issue. First off, you need to test that theory. Is it always 5 kilometers it flares up, or is it 5 kilometers on the track or on the road or on the path that you run that it flares? Because I've had it before that it was a kind of a funny one. It was like, it always flares up. I can only run to 5 kilometers and then it flares up. And if you looked at the lady's running, let's say her the run that she was doing, once she hit the like 4.9 kilometer mark, there was like a steep incline in what she was running, like a very steep incline up to the top of a hill. And we were like, do you reckon it has more to do with that steep incline than it has to do with the rest of the run? Because there was no pain throughout the run. So understanding what your 5K is and testing the theory. What we did then is we brought them back to a track, and we were able to cover 5K on a track or on flat ground. And what that does is it helps you to also build so you know you can run the 5K, but then you become a lot more confident in your body being able to cover that distance. So you kind of break this belief or break this block in your mind, because often there is blocks in your mind that will contribute to that. So you break that block in your mind, you see you can cover 5K on a track, you understand, okay, right, it's the hill that's getting me, it's getting me when I'm fatigued. Is there any way I can start there and then finish somewhere else? That's another way of doing it. Or do I just include more hills in my training? Because that's another simple way of doing it. Another one as well is look at the 5K mark, is it hills? Is there something that you're passing that's making you uncomfortable? Are you running past maybe a house or a school, or is there dogs around that area that make you a bit more uncomfortable, and you're a bit more uptight in how you're running, and then you come back to like a walk, or you're a bit more wary and you speed up to try to get away from there? These are all little small things that actually have a big effect at people at times. And if you take that competency and you bring it back to the track and you know you can cover the 5K, then it's a lot easier to notice, okay, well, what else is going on around me? I know I can cover 5, 6, 7K on the track, so my body's able to handle that. What is it that's affecting me outside of the track? And then you slowly but surely build up. If it's the dogs, or if it's schools or whatever, becoming aware of it oftentimes can have a huge effect, because then you're aware and you're not as afraid of something that you're aware of. And I think that's a huge one, is understanding that it can have effect on you. Or maybe you just change your route so you run somewhere else instead. Really simple fix. Now, the last one I'll talk about, I want to make this a kind of a short podcast so I'm able to just get through everything that you need to know, is back pain and lifting in the gym. This is a huge one, all right? And I know if you yourself don't have this problem, you probably know somebody who has this problem of deadlifting in the gym, and the idea of how deadlifting is bad for your back and how it affects certain people and it gives them back pain. Burpees is another big one. RDLs are another one. But with this, in this case, right, I basically, it's easier to talk through a case study because I've done this. This has happened so many times, so I understand this one, in that I've done this with a lot of different people, and oftentimes you see it's beliefs first, and then after that it's like tolerance of the body. Fearing the deadlift is so common. It's so common for whatever reason, and it's probably because of the idea that you should be watching your back and you need to protect your back and all that. And then people saying that you need to have perfect form in the gym all the time is another big one. And if you don't have perfect form, you're going to injure your back, especially on the deadlift. It's the big one to do it, is what people say. Not true. Load of bollocks. Don't believe it. Okay. If you do come across this, or if you have struggled with this in the past, you need to look at how you can break down the deadlift. And I think it's such an important one. I was actually just off the phone with a guy who's going to be jumping on board, and he's basically been struggling with back pain for a long time, and he fears the deadlift, so really doesn't want to go near the deadlift at all because it causes it to flare up. GAA player, and I said to him, like, if you want to jump on board, if this is something that you're interested in doing or something you really want to get over, the very first thing I'm going to go after is the deadlift in the gym, because it's such a common exercise, it's such a common movement that you do on a day-to-day. If you pick up something off the ground, it's a deadlift, basically. So you can't be just avoiding this movement altogether for the rest of your life, because if you do, it only declines. It doesn't get better. If you avoid something, it's only going to get worse in a lot of cases. So with this, we're going after the deadlift. But and another example for a guy who I worked with, and you can check my Instagram page, he talks about it in detail. He talks about the issue that he had, and as well as how he got over it. What you need to focus on is building a tolerance to that movement, first off. If you can build a tolerance to that movement through using something like kettlebells or dumbbells, and then you change that to like a suitcase deadlift where you're doing it on one side, that's a really, really good starting point, because you're able to go through the movement with lightweight, and oftentimes it'll flare up when you do this because you have such a fear of it. There's a belief there that it's bad for you. And then you address the beliefs, you address the attitude, you change it, you understand what's a good pain, what's a bad pain. You understand that because you're lifting light, form isn't actually the biggest thing in the world. And if you're too conscious and too focused on form, that actually can be bad for you, because you become so conscious of it that the second you go out of form, you start feeling it more, and then you get DOMs and you blame it on everything else. So with this one, I would say to, first off, as I said, build up your kettlebell, build up your suitcase, and then work for a hex bar deadlift. The hex bar deadlift is very similar to a squat, but it's a lot more comfortable for people. And if anyone who doesn't know what the hex bar is, it's your trap bar. It's like it's a deadlift that you stand in the middle, has two handles either side, and you lift it from there. It's a really, really good one to build competence on, because it's a very similar position to a normal deadlift, like nearly identical, but small bit more of a squat pattern because of the way the handles are and the way you're moving up and down. And it can help you to build up weight and become confident in what is known as a deadlift, and you can lift a lot of weight with these. So then when you change over to the straight bar, it's not as much of an issue. But what I often do with people is we'll go hex bar, we'll add weight, we'll increase weight, and then I'll go back squat. Because oftentimes people who struggle with a deadlift are also very conscious of a back squat because of the position and the pressure that goes through their back at the time. So we'll go to the back squat, we'll mix that with hex bar deadlifts, because this will help us to build tolerance, especially around that area of the back. And then we'll introduce a straight bar. And literally we'll just go straight bar, no weight at the start, focus on going through the movement, adding weight, lightweight with reps, maybe just pull to the shin and stop, and pull to the shin and stop, as we increase the weight. And then we'll go for high reps. And the reason we go for high reps, because as you can see, we're ticking off each of the competencies. We know you can do a kettlebell deadlift. We know you can do a suitcase deadlift. We know you can do a hex bar deadlift. We know that you can now do the back squat and a straight bar, so with no weight. So what we do is, oftentimes, I'll make them go for high reps, so that it's lightweight, high reps, so that we can understand the feeling of DOMs as opposed to the feeling of actually what a pain is. And people will often then say, okay, it's actually DOMs I've been getting all the time. DOMs is delayed onset muscle soreness, for those who don't know. But it's a great way of building it up. You just go high reps. Then you start to increase the weight and you drop the reps slightly, and you continue to follow that cycle. And what you're doing is you're building this confidence that people have literally through using competence, where you're ticking off each of them. And on each call then, well, look, you got through the suitcase deadlifts, all right, small bit of pain, that's okay, we know how to manage it. Now you got through the hex bar, perfect. So let's try a back squat with the hex bar, just to add a bit of stress. Now let's go to the straight bar, but let's add no weight and just go through the reps. And then let's start to build it up. And each time they do that, it's like they tick it off in their own head about what they're able to do. But the only way you can do this, and this is why it's so good to work with a professional on these things, because they'll obviously be able to tell you what's good and what's bad and how to break them down in a lot of ways, is knowing what competencies are going to help you build confidence is going to be huge. And then breaking them down and practicing and training them each individually is a great way of testing it and seeing where your limits are and seeing where the body is going to kick up, if it will kick up, because it may not. This can be really useful for chronic injuries, as confidence is going to be a huge factor. So like a recurring back pain, recurring knee pain, recurring hip pain. But it's also excellent for acute injuries where you're trying to get back to sport, because it's, you know that, okay, right, I tore my hamstring, so I need to get up to 1,500 meters of high-speed running. Gives you internal confidence, and at the same time, you're able to tolerate generally a lot higher than, you're able to tolerate a stimulus that's a lot higher than what you will be feeling on a day-to-day. So technically, when you get back to training, your body should be able to handle it a bit more as you adapt to the other factors of the sharp accelerations, change of directions, impact, all of that. And as a simple one, if you build up enough competence in each aspect of your sport and the exercise and the movements that you need to do, the confidence that comes with that is inevitable. So you will be able to get back to where you are if you follow this type of a system. But as I said, it's a lot better to work with a professional who can teach you how to do that, who can tell you what to work on in each section. But that's all I'm going to talk about today. And if anyone has any questions, just reach out to me on Instagram at The Mobility Tutor. Send me an email at info@themobilitytutor.com and let me know if you have any questions or anything you'd like me to cover in a bit more detail. But that's all from me today, and I will chat to you all again soon next week. Have a good one. Okay guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking to learn more about what we do, as well as check out any of the mobility and rehab programs we have available, just head over to the description of this podcast and you will find a link to all the programs there. As always, thank you for listening, and I will chat to you all again in the next episode. Have a good one.